So Nick, we are ready to have you come and join us.
Right. That was a good time. Thank you. I was hoping to hear a little bit of the previous witnesses, but all I heard were outdoor grow is good, which is great. That sums up a big chunk of my testimony too. So thank you. You guys ready to move right along?
We are.
You are.
We don't have anything further.
No, I don't have anything for the screen. It's all up here. Thank you so much for having me. This is a really exciting moment, I think, for the state. And
Introduce yourself for the recorded.
Yes. Nick Zigelbaum. I serve on the board of Rural Vermont. I'm also a beef and pork organic grass-fed farmer in Chelsea, Vermont. I do intend to grow as an outdoor grower if and when these regulations pass. So that's my interest in this matter as well. I hope you don't mind, I've got notes on my phone. So there are three themes that I want to touch on: access to markets, fairness in the marketplace, and criminal justice. Those are kind of the big points that I think are important to really be talking about on cannabis regulation. The last sentence from the last witness is a very important point that I think has not really been covered in this bill. There are really two different kinds of cultivators. There are outdoor growers and indoor growers, and they're very different types of businesses and they're different types of operations. Right now, the bill has it's in good shape, I think, but it has some problems regarding those differences. If you'd like, I can get deep into that. I'm sure you've heard some about it. One of the big issues is security. The enclosed lock facility, which has been kind of a sticking point for a long time, is in a better place. The definition for that term is in a better place than I think it's ever been, but it's still a little vague. Personally, I would be growing in a field that is invisible from public view. It has currently cattle fencing around it, 3-strand electric cattle fencing, which is good to keep my cows in, but it doesn't really stop anything else. And whether or not that is acceptable as a secure area is, I think, vague in the current bill. I would like to see that definition changed to simply a secure area without the word fencing in it. Fencing is the thing that gives me pause because I don't really know what kind of fencing that could entail. Additionally, there's another section of the bill, 881A1G, which describes the authority of the Cannabis Control Board to require audio and video security, which would be totally invisible for our cultivators growing outside. So that's just a small detail about that point. Cultivators, as far as access goes, as a farmer, I sell directly to chefs my products now. It's really important that I have access to a direct market so that I can get the highest price for my product. I can cut out a lot of the middle people. It gives great feedback to me on how to make my product better. It's a really important thing across the board with most of our agricultural products. Most farmers want to have direct access to their markets. Although cannabis is a new and exciting product, the same applies. Being able to have direct access to my market is really important. I think as the bill is written now, it would be possible for me to get a cultivator license and a retail license, but there's a couple points on it, section 8812A6, that asks the control board to limit the number, to come up with regulations to limit the number of visitors at any one time to a cannabis establishment, which would include a cultivator. And right now I have an Airbnb. We do on-farm weddings and events. I mean, we have people coming all the time. Our farm is essentially a public space at this point. The cannabis fields will be private, but that seems like a big source of conflict for me too. I think we need to start thinking about this more like wine and beer. It's something I envision having a tasting room in the future and having people come to my farm, try out different strains, really experience this the way we experience wine and beer, and have that high, artisanal nature of the product.
Jim.
Sorry, it's not.
I'm sorry, but that raises all kinds of red flags about
I'm sure
Travel.
insurance, liability,
No.
traveling.
traveling, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would.
I mean, it's the same as wine and beer. No, it's the same thing. You go to a brewery, you go to a vineyard, you drink. Somebody else has to drive. That's the law. So I think we need to start thinking about it like that and looking at it like another
I
product.
appreciate
like
that, but one glass of wine may be different than, you know.
Right. Well, there are legal limits, right? And there could easily be legal limits for this as well.
Okay.
They could be zero tolerance. If you saw it to be like that, but that's, you know, if we're gonna classify this, if we're gonna legalize this, then we need to approach it like any other legal product. You know, it's something that people can use at their discretion, and for farmers who make it, and this is a big part of the state's agricultural economy, we're gonna be making this really nice product and inviting people to come and try it and buy it direct from the farm. That's another thing I would like to see in this bill is rather than making me get a retail license, include a cultivator, give cultivators the option to sell direct from their farm. As the bill's written now, all the labeling requirements are the same between retailers and cultivators. I don't think there's really anything else I would have to do to get both those licenses except pay a second fee. So it would be nice to include that as part of the next round of comments. Sorry.
You good, Jim?
Oh, I'm fine.
Well,
I appreciate the question.
the likelihood of somebody running down from Milton to steal your grapes or your oats is a little bit less than somebody running down to steal your plants. Is that, how do you envision security in your environment?
In my environment, I
You're
have
doing a wedding on Saturday.
right. I have friends who've had plants stolen, and I've heard of people having whole crops stolen from drying facilities as well. For my particular situation, I mean, my drying facility is going to be in my barn. I have 2 livestock guardian dogs that cover my whole farm and are not friendly to outsiders. So I'm not really concerned about it at all.
I met a few of them on the campaign trail.
Yeah, they're out there. And so that's part of my problem with the way it's written, is that everyone's going to have a different situation. In my scenario, no one is going to, it's just not possible for anybody to come steal from me. They'd have to be like a really close friend of mine and know everything that I do and really plan in advance. There's not going to be a middle of the night run on my barn. So, you know, but that's also, that's on us. I mean, it's a really high value product, and it's something that I don't want to have stolen any more than you want someone to steal it. So I feel like that's something that cultivators can perform on their own. So the other piece of cultivators is there's a section on local governance, which gives municipalities the authority to permit or prohibit a cannabis establishment. I think that is in conflict with the agricultural exemption laws, and I think that needs to be sorted out. Right now, you can, you know, for agriculture, you can do anything, and the local towns can't really stop that, and I think that we should maintain that with this as well. I completely understand the concept that a town might not want to have a retail establishment right in the town center, and I think that should be the case. But as far as cultivators go, I think they kind of sit outside that purview. Another part, so this is a little bit on rulemaking. The definition for plant canopy applies to indoor grow operations. Is another way that indoor and outdoor differ. Right now, the definition for plant canopy is based on you know, active plant surface, and it doesn't include things like office space and storage, or you know, the square footage that the fees would be based on. For an outdoor grow operation, we have lanes, fence lines, roads. There's a lot of things that take up space, and how that is going to be calculated seems like it could be gamed. You know, I could be really bad at estimating how big my plants are going to be in the fall when I apply for the permit in the spring. So I feel like that should be maybe, you know, I've been saying, I understand the historical precedent for plant canopy in other states, but in this case, I think maybe tying fees to either volume, sales volume, and pounds of dry product, which is really the only universal factor across all of these businesses, Another thing is a plant canopy in an indoor facility is going to produce a lot more than the plant canopy of an outdoor facility. So they'll be paying the same fee, but producing a lot more product. Tying that to volume of sales in dollars or in dry pounds makes a lot more sense to me and would be fair across everybody's spectrum. Again, estimating at the beginning of the season what you expect to yield at the end, I don't know how to answer that question. That's something that needs to be figured out. But just tying it to plant canopy to square footage, it's not gonna, that's a problem for fairness. Additionally, for fairness, the timeline that's currently in the bill for when licenses can be applied for really advantages indoor grow operations. Cultivators can begin applying in September. I plant, in June. The first retail establishments will open in April of the following year. The only people that we will supply them are indoor grow operations that got started in September and grew through the winter. And then they'll be the first ones in the door of all those retail places that following spring. Outdoor growers are gonna be showing up in November, October. So that's another area where indoor and outdoor grow are kind of in conflict, and the bill does not really promote fairness in this industry.
Jim?
What would the advantage be of an outdoor grower then?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. The advantage is manifold. Environmentally, it's a huge advantage to grow outside. I don't need to pay for sunlight and rain, and neither do you. The indoor grow operations use something like 1 megawatt hour per pound of cannabis. I would fact check that, but that's a number that I've heard. That's a lot of energy to go into this product. I don't use any electricity for my outdoor grow operation, for my future outdoor grow operation. And so that's a huge thing, environmental factor. The advantage, other than that, is there's a bit of a built environment factor there. I don't need to have a big warehouse. I don't need to have that kind of infrastructure. So it's a lot more accessible for farmers to grow outside than it is to grow inside. In addition to the electricity consumption, indoor growers are typically using fertilizer, liquid fertilizers, which are not great environmentally. I'm going to be using manure, which is a sustainable product. And in addition, I can rotate my crop and incorporate it into my livestock plans, into other crops. So I can really do a good job of environmental stewardship with this, whereas indoor growers are not they just can't by the nature of their grow operation. I think there are organic liquid fertilizers, there are, so they could still grow organically, but they can't get away from the electric demand. So that's kind of a big one for indoor grow
Right,
operations.
so primarily energy.
Energy is kind of a big one, yeah.
Thank you.
And we
That's
guys,
the question.
So how would you feel about cultivating for a wholesale market?
I would feel fine about that. It would be great. I sell my beef and pork to chefs, which is kind of like wholesale, and that's worked out really well for me. But cannabis offers an opportunity to sell. An individual doesn't really want to buy a cow, but I can package a small amount of cannabis to sell to an individual, and I can send it through the mail in the future. So the opportunity to direct market is a lot more attractive with cannabis than with something like beef or pork. If there was a good price in a wholesale market and that worked in my situation, I would go for that. I'd much rather make one sale once a year than dozens. But the opportunity, a lot of farms out there do direct sales, and that's a big moneymaker for them, having farm stands, and I think that's important to maintain that kind of access. I know you guys just heard about dispensaries, and I have some concerns about that as well. Right now, I believe in the bill, medical dispensaries can sell retail and can apply for a retail license. And my understanding is that medical marijuana is a different product than recreational marijuana. Medical cannabis can make health claims, and recreational cannot. So, is that not true? I thought that was the case. I think that these things should be separate. I think that medical cannabis is a separate thing, and the dispensaries have separate regulations governing them right now. If they want to be in this recreational cannabis game, great, let's all play by the same rules. And they can have the same license, same permitting process that we go through. I think, again, as far as fairness goes, they'll have a huge advantage. getting into it.
Ralph?
Well, how could you say play by the same rules when, like, for instance, the product that you're selling, can you guarantee there's a specific THC content or the CBC content as opposed to them who go through and actually scientifically verify every plant, every flower? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, that should be a requirement that we test our cannabis and label it as such. And I believe that's in the bill. What is also in the bill is that medical dispensaries can do their own testing, which is a real source of concern for me. I'm gonna be doing third-party testing, and I'm sure that every medical dispensary and medical cannabis grower right now is doing that fairly, but it really opens the door for corruption and bias to do your own testing. Not a lot of industry, there's not a lot of great history in industry testing themselves. So I think that's what I mean. There's no reason why they should have special rules.
Bob?
A lot of this is probably board material, but I think you do us and maybe you a disservice by not putting this down on paper.
Oh no, this will be, absolutely. I just got a chance to really coordinate these comments with our group, and they are going to produce a written statement for hopefully early next week.
Chock full of good material.
Yeah, there's a lot of details I'm not covering. The application date, the permit date, April 30th, is a super busy time of year for growers, for cultivators, and moving that to something like January would be great. So that'll be in written comments, because that's not a really big deal. If it has to be April 30th, we'll survive. So I skipped over criminal justice reform. I wanted to come back to that. Criminal background checks. I actually have a question for you. What is the legislature mostly concerned about? What's right now in the bill, it says that nonviolent drug offenses will not make will not automatically decline a license. What would?
So we're considering S54 right now, which was created in the Senate. So your question might more accurately, you might get a better answer if you ask the Senate their thoughts on that.
Okay.
I can tell you that the general concept that I've heard is to let's ensure that people who may have a conviction, a marijuana conviction from pre-legalization era wouldn't automatically be disadvantaged from being able to get into a legal market, assuming they didn't kill anyone.
Right. No, I mean, I understand that part, but why have the criminal background check at all? I mean, what are we looking for?
Jim?
If I could attempt to answer it, Marcia would know more, but in alcohol, we heavily regulated system, and there are a series of, in some cases, background checks to protect, being a front for other businesses and so much more. So we do background checks in so many walks of life today, whether you're a child care provider, a teacher, for obvious reasons, to heavily regulated industries as this would be.
I think.
And I think the medical dispensaries today all have to go through that.
I have an intern who follows me around this building following the legislative process, and I had to agree to a criminal background check for that, so.
Yeah, I'm not against it. I'm curious why it's there. And the way the bill is written now, there's a few conflicting sections about this topic. One section says that every owner, principal, and employee needs to get a license, and that license is contingent on the criminal background check. In a brick and mortar establishment where you have employees for years, that could work. I might hire 20 people for 1 month in October, and they might show up October 1st. That might be the first day I meet them. So getting them to pass a criminal background check beforehand is going to be pretty difficult. Additionally, I just think that if we were talking Prohibition era, maybe it would be different in alcohol, but now, we're legalizing something that has been a real problem in criminal justice for a long time, and getting people to pass background checks. I think that opens the door for a lot of bias. I wouldn't be against, personally, I have a clean criminal history, there's a section in the bill that requires it of the applicant, and I think that's reasonable to have the owner or the owner or the principal, the applicant, pass a criminal background check, so it's not a front or it's not some history of crime going on. I mean, that would make sense to me, and that would be fine. But to have every employee of a business pass this, it just wouldn't work for agriculture. And frankly, I don't think a lot of cultivators would really comply with that, or be able to comply with it. So yeah, that's my piece on that. Lastly, on criminal justice reform, it's not really in my purview, but we have talked to organizations like Justice for All, and I don't think this really lives within this bill, but I think that, I hope that you guys would talk to organizations like that to develop legislation around reparations, and specifically expunging cannabis-related, nonviolent cannabis-related crimes, and releasing people that are imprisoned for nonviolent cannabis-related crimes as part of this, or at least to happen coincidentally with it. I think that's really important to not forget that for a long time, people who are doing exactly what we're trying to make legal have been put in prison. Oh, I have another point on criminal background. Right now, in the bill, section 4230 allows dispensing of 1 ounce or less between people, as long as it's not advertised or promoted. I assume dispensing means giving and not selling. But the criminal penalty for selling it is up to 2 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. And that just doesn't seem like a appropriate scale to me for what that is. I think that those criminal penalties have been there for a long time and should probably be revisited and perhaps relaxed, because a lot of people are going to be doing this, and I think that it makes sense to not expose a huge part of our population to this kind of criminal act. There's already a lot of people growing 2 plants in their dwelling right now and giving it to friends, but simple act of bartering or or being paid for that is a pretty serious crime the way this bill is written now. I think we should update that. So I will submit these in writing with some exact suggestions for how I think some of these things can be fixed. I don't know if you want me to talk about those now or not.
Sure. Well, I have a question about the criminal justice issue, about reducing that fine. I mean, one of the goals of regulating the cannabis market is to reduce the black market. So do you have suggestions about how we can reduce the black market?
Yeah.
Besides allowing people to grow, I mean, just, even, transactions that are occurring outside of the regulatory market is a black market.
Right.
And we would prefer to see those be reduced.
Me too. And I think that since this is current law, the penalty for selling 1 ounce or less, that we haven't reduced the black market any more than it already is with that. So the penalty's not going to do it. But the thing that I think would be a big help, and this goes back to the timeline for applications, I know that the commission had some ideas to offer unlimited small licenses for the beginning, for the first round of permits. And I think that would be helpful for reducing the black market trade, because if right now it says you have basically 30 days to apply, and if you miss that window, if you're in the black market, and say you have a crime in your past, and maybe it's not violent, and maybe it's not even drug related, but maybe it's enough that you don't want to go through the process because you're going to show up suddenly as somebody who wants to grow. I mean, getting rid of the criminal background check would actually probably be the best thing to get rid of the black market, because all of those people who are currently in it may have crimes in their history. And even though it's not an automatic denial, I mean, I had the opportunity, I considered applying for a medical license years ago to be able to grow, and I looked into it, and it's really, it just looked like an opportunity to draw the attention of authorities to me. And if I thought there was any reason why I might fail the criminal background check, then I will have lost my business basically altogether. So one way to deal with that, to bring the black market in underneath this, would be to have permits to increase the time for that permit process, for that 30-day window, to make that longer, and to maybe not allow for large grows in the first couple of years, to limit the size and scale of this for the first couple of years. I'm a little ambivalent about that idea. It's kind of messing with market forces, but it would give us some time to test things out. It would give us some time to bring everybody in like a safe place and try this all out together, and then retool it for the following year, increase the size of the permits, allow people to grow. The current CBD hemp kind of boom happening right now is an interesting experiment to be going on at the same time. It seems like everybody in Vermont wants to grow hemp this year, and it's going to have some pretty severe consequences in the market. It's natural. I think that the same will probably happen with THC cannabis, and I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens.
Thank you for putting your several suggestions into writing for us, because of course, unless we were writing copious notes, we wouldn't be able to remember all of
Yes.
the parts of the bill that you specifically referenced.
Yes, I absolutely will. Yeah, I mean the major points that indoor versus outdoor grow, as you're looking through this and digging into the details. I mean, think about the difference between growing one crop once a year and growing multiple crops throughout the year inside, and how those kinds of things are going to affect each other. I mean, it's a very different kind of business, and requires different regulation. And one way of dealing with that would either be to take all of my little details that I'm going to send you and change all the little words in the bill, or simply change the cultivator license to be indoor cultivator and an outdoor cultivator. We could just have two different cultivators. I think that would work. Thank you so much for the time. Is there any other?
Just as an update, so you mentioned our criminal justice system. About 10 years ago, Vermont had about 2,200 men in prison. And we were on a trajectory to this day to have around 3,000. So we started what we call justice reinvestment, where we released nonviolent criminals. So we're down to about 1,200 people now instead of the 3,000. That's been in process now for the last 10 years. And if there are people you know who are in jail for marijuana, or let us know, because I don't think they should be anymore. That's not the way our policies are going. And we want to continue on that track too. And there's a lot of discussion now about moving forward in another way to the women's prison. Do we need that, or in what direction? So it's a good point you make, but there's an update to what you were talking about.
Yeah, I am not savvy in criminal justice in Vermont. I'm a farmer, and I would be happy to hear that there are no people in prison for cannabis-related crimes. I think that it's important to have that legislation on the books as a show of.
There is information.
Care about.
I was at an ACLU presentation where they said there were 13,000 prisoners in Vermont.
Not true.
They're not. We need good numbers. But just, we share those concerns. I think that's the direction we're moving.
Great. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick logistical question.